Hey everyone, Richard Bass here from Thriving with Richard Bass. Today we're talking about one of the most frustrating challenges parents of ADHD children face, why traditional discipline approaches often backfire, and what actually works instead. As a special education teacher for over a decade and author of several parenting books, I've worked with hundreds of ADHD children and their families. One of the most common things I hear from exhausted parents is, "Nothing works with my child. We've tried everything." The truth is, ADHD children need different approaches because their brains work differently. In the next few minutes, I'll explain why conventional discipline fails ADHD kids, share what actually works based on neuroscience and classroom experience, and give you specific strategies you can start using today. Let's start with understanding why traditional discipline doesn't work for ADHD children. Most conventional discipline is based on the assumption that children can consistently control their impulses, remember consequences, and learn from past experiences. For ADHD children, these assumptions often don't hold true. ADHD affects executive functioning, which includes impulse control, working memory, and the ability to think before acting. When we punish an ADHD child for impulsive behavior, we're essentially punishing them for a neurological difference they can't fully control. Let me share an example from my classroom. 7-year-old Marcus would constantly interrupt during lessons, despite repeated reminders and consequences. His teacher had tried timeouts, lost privileges, and even calls home. Nothing seemed to work, and Marcus was developing a reputation as the bad kid. When I started working with Marcus, I realized he wasn't choosing to interrupt. His impulse control was genuinely impaired, and by the time he remembered the rule about raising his hand, the words had already left his mouth. Punishing him for this was like punishing someone for sneezing. Here's what happens with traditional discipline approaches. Timeouts often don't work because ADHD children need movement and stimulation to regulate, not isolation and boredom. Taking away privileges for extended periods doesn't work because ADHD children live in the present moment and can't connect distant consequences to current behavior. Lectures and explanations often fail because ADHD children's working memory makes it hard to hold on to information while processing emotions. And punishment-based systems frequently backfire because they increase stress, which actually makes ADHD symptoms worse. I worked with a family whose 9-year-old daughter, Emma, was constantly losing privileges for forgetting chores and homework. The more they took away, the more overwhelmed and defiant she became. They were stuck in a cycle where punishment was making the behaviors they wanted to change even worse. So what does work for ADHD children? The key is working with their neurology instead of against it. Here are 5 evidence-based strategies that actually create positive change. Strategy 1. Use immediate, natural consequences instead of delayed punishments. ADHD children need to see the connection between their actions and outcomes right away. If your child leaves their bike in the driveway, the natural consequence is helping to move it to safety, not losing screen time next weekend. I had a student, Jake, who would rush through assignments and make careless mistakes. Instead of punishing him for poor work quality, we implemented an immediate consequence. He would use a special checklist to review his work before turning it in. This natural consequence helped him develop better habits without shame or punishment. Strategy 2. Focus on environmental modifications before behavioral consequences. Many ADHD behaviors are responses to overwhelming or understimulating environments. Before assuming your child is being defiant, ask what their environment might need. This might mean providing fidget tools during homework time, using noise-canceling headphones in loud environments, or breaking large tasks into smaller, manageable steps. When we change the environment to support ADHD brains, many behavioral issues resolve naturally. Strategy 3. Use positive reinforcement strategically and frequently. ADHD children's brains are wired to seek stimulation and novelty. They respond much better to earning privileges than losing them, but the reinforcement needs to be immediate and meaningful to them. Sarah, a 10-year-old in my class, struggled with staying in her seat. Instead of punishing her for getting up, we created a system where she could earn movement breaks by staying seated for increasingly longer periods. This approach worked with her need for movement rather than against it. Strategy 4, teach replacement behaviors instead of just stopping unwanted ones. ADHD children need to know what to do, not just what not to do. If your child interrupts conversations, teach them a specific signal they can use to indicate they have something to say. For Marcus, who we talked about earlier, we taught him to write down his thoughts on a piece of paper when he wanted to interrupt. This gave his hands something to do and helped him remember his idea until it was his turn to speak. Strategy 5. Build in success opportunities throughout the day. ADHD children often hear criticism more than praise because their impulsivity creates frequent conflicts. Intentionally create situations where they can succeed and receive positive feedback. This might mean giving them a special job that uses their energy constructively, asking them to help with tasks that match their interests, or catching them doing things right and acknowledging it immediately. Let's talk about some specific challenging behaviors and how to address them differently. For children who can't sit still during homework, instead of demanding they stay seated, create a standing workspace or provide a wobble cushion. Movement actually helps many ADHD children focus better. For children who forget rules and instructions, instead of assuming defiance, provide visual reminders and break instructions into single steps. Their working memory limitations are real, not willful disobedience. For children who have emotional outbursts, instead of sending them to timeout immediately, help them recognize the warning signs of overwhelm and provide tools for regulation. Remember that emotional intensity is often part of ADHD. Here's a crucial mindset shift that helps many families. Stop asking, how do I make my ADHD child behave like a neurotypical child? Instead, ask, how do I help my child succeed with the brain they have? This doesn't mean lowering expectations or making excuses. It means providing the right kind of support so your child can meet age-appropriate expectations in their own way. Let me share a success story. The Johnson family was struggling with their 8-year-old son Alex, who seemed incapable of following their morning routine. They had tried charts, consequences, and rewards, but mornings remained chaotic. We redesigned their approach entirely. Instead of a long list of morning tasks, Alex got one task at a time with a visual reminder. Instead of consequences for being slow, he earned extra time with Dad for efficient mornings. Instead of fighting his need for movement, they built jumping jacks into the routine. Within 2 weeks, Alex was completing his morning routine independently most days. The family went from daily battles to peaceful mornings because they started working with Alex's ADHD brain instead of against it. Now let's address some common concerns parents have about these approaches. Won't this make my child think they can get away with anything? Not at all. We're still maintaining expectations and boundaries. We're just changing how we help children meet those expectations. What about the real world? My child needs to learn to cope. Absolutely true. But children learn coping skills more effectively when they're not constantly stressed from punishment and criticism. Success builds on success. This seems like a lot of work initially, yes. But traditional punishment approaches with ADHD children require constant enforcement and often escalate over time. These strategies actually reduce conflicts long term. Here are some practical steps you can take starting today. First, observe your child's challenging behaviors for patterns. Are they more likely to occur when they're hungry, tired, overwhelmed, or understimulated? Address these underlying factors first. Second, replace your most frequent punishments with natural consequences or environmental changes. If your child constantly loses their backpack, create a specific spot by the door rather than taking away privileges. Third, increase positive attention for appropriate behaviors. ADHD children need to hear praise at least 5 times more often than criticism to maintain motivation and self-esteem. Fourth, break big expectations into smaller, achievable steps. Instead of clean your room, try put all the clothes in the hamper, then we'll tackle the next step. Fifth, involve your child in problem solving. Ask them what makes tasks difficult and what might help. ADHD children often have great insights into their own needs. Remember that progress with ADHD children is rarely linear. You'll have good days and challenging days. The goal is gradual improvement over time, not perfection. Also remember that every ADHD child is unique. What works for one may not work for another. Stay flexible and be willing to adjust your approach based on what you observe. Most importantly, maintain your relationship with your child. When discipline approaches damage the parent-child connection, they're not working regardless of whether behavior improves temporarily. ADHD children need to know that they're loved and valued for who they are, not just for how well they behave. They need to experience success and feel capable. They need adults who understand that their brains work differently and are willing to meet them where they are. When we approach ADHD children with curiosity instead of frustration, with support instead of punishment, and with understanding instead of judgment, we create the conditions for real, lasting change. Your ADHD child has incredible strengths, creativity, energy, unique perspectives, and often intense passion for their interests. Our job as parents and educators is to nurture these strengths while helping them develop skills in areas where they struggle. That's all for today. If you found this helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to Thriving with Richard Bass. Drop a comment below sharing your experiences with ADHD discipline approaches. What strategies have worked for your family? What challenges are you still facing? I read every comment and often use your questions for future videos. See you in the next video.